Brian, it's so great to have you with us today on the Automate podcast. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate the invite, Cliff.
Brian has a long history in the automotive space. Today, Brian is involved with a company called Exitwise, a company he co-founded with his college buddy, Todd Sullivan. He brings a lot of insight, both from the acquisition side, but also from the sales side. But I want to get our conversation started just on this whole M&A dynamic that we cover at Automate. I know you're so intensely involved with and have been involved with throughout much of your career. But we've seen a real slowdown, almost over a 2-year period almost. And we were thinking maybe this year it would get much more active, but we haven't seen that in the first quarter and even into April. I mean, we've seen some rumors, but what's your perspective on why it has slowed down and what you think we're going to see this year?
Well, I think it's a great place to start. Based on the industry and what I do day to day, I'm obviously really bullish for 24. I think most of us are. The last 12 to 15 months have been really interesting. I like to kind of think of it that, there's plenty of money on the sidelines. We all hear the stories of the dry powder that's sitting, waiting. Certainly interest rates have not helped, especially the bigger deals. As you start getting closer to the $1 billion deals, it gets really, really hard. But I think the experience that we've seen is instead of maybe 8 or 9 really excited buyers, there's 1 or 2.
Okay.
And so it puts more, if you think about one of the important aspects of M&A, if you're on the sell side, is competition and creating competition, obviously. You have less opportunity to do so because there's less aggressive buyers that you're, realistically playing off of each other. And so that means that every shot on goal is a little bit more important. You can't miss on those opportunities. Sure. And if you do, if you have, inaccuracies in your financials or you miss something in a document that gets caught in diligence, like it's more impactful because you only have a couple shots. And then I would say, the businesses that those buyers are looking for have obviously weaned as well. I'd say 3 years ago, you could look at anything that had, revenue or product or profitability, or people, and it was a sellable business.
Sure.
Today and over the last 12 months, it's felt more, what's probably obvious, but you better have a couple of those. You better have a growth story and potentially some profitability. Or an amazing product with growth, or amazing people if you're a little bit more on the service side. And if you don't, it's hard sledding. So a bit of a long answer to your question. There's a lot of opportunities out there. We talk to a lot of founders that have very, very sellable businesses, but we're experiencing the same thing that everybody else is. It's just not, the pace and the velocity is not the same as it was 2 years ago. Right.
Do you expect it to pick up? Or what would be some of the things keeping it from picking up, or that would drive maybe more activity?
Yeah, I think it already has, and in our small little slice of the world, we're certainly not seeing the same percentage of deals as others in the industry, but in our slice, I think that it already has begun to pick up. It's just that these deals, for businesses that have more than a couple $1 million of EBITDA or a couple $1 million in ARR, these deals take a long time. They take 6, 9, sometimes 12 months to consummate. And so I think we've already started to see the uptick. It's just that you have a lot of deals in process that haven't been announced yet. So we're all kind of sitting around saying like, oh, I heard that one's out there, or I saw that one's coming, but it's more in the preparatory or initial stages, and we just haven't seen the final exit yet. So I think we're in the midst of that upswing already. We just haven't seen the press releases yet.
Yeah. I think there's a few that are under LOI, or there's been letters of intention that I've heard about. And obviously already JD Power, that one has been reported on. They're hoping for an $8 billion exit at some point this year. And the Vista Equity folks are trying to get it, trying to build an IPO for Solera. I think it's going to be much more difficult for them on an IPO front in this environment.
Very much so. I would 100% agree with you.
Right.
Yeah. Again, we're a small slice of the M&A world, but just in our competence level, right, in automotive marketing technology, we have 6 different deals that we're working on right now. Now those are in different phases. Everyone's either preparing for or working through that process, but I don't know that we're necessarily special in that. I think that everybody is in that world of seeing more activity today than they did 6 months ago.
Is it different today? Easier or harder? Is there a different feel?
I'm older and
Yes,
calmer,
yes.
I think, than I was back then. Like when we started Shift, I mean, we all joke, question ourselves, what were we thinking? How could we have not seen what was coming? We started Shift in basically the late summer of 2008.
Yes.
In the state of Michigan with, our first clients being Chrysler. Little did we know, really what the next 6 to 12 months was going to hold.
And this was, all hell was getting ready to break loose. No one realized how bad it was going to get at that moment. But you guys are right there. I mean, it was...
I'd love to say that had I known that was coming, that we would have made different decisions, but I don't regret it at all. I think the stresses that, we all feel as entrepreneurs, everybody's got those stories. And of course, that one's really, really extreme.
Right.
We were all having young families. My wife was pregnant, when we jumped, into the boat. Right. And so we're all in that mode of stresses and strains. But I guess that's why I love the founder community, because we're all crazy. We're all nuts. We've all gone through these stories and these times that are unexpected and have these challenges that you look back and say, I have no idea how we got through that. But, we oftentimes do get through it. And I would say how it feels different now, certainly jokes aside, I feel a little bit more confident in kind of our abilities to find success as entrepreneurs, as I get, older and wiser. But this one doesn't feel, quite as nasty. I think if you read the newspapers each morning, you can probably get pretty depressed. But I feel like, I feel like we're in a reasonable place. And yes, there's some headwinds, but I don't see the same stresses as we did back in 2008.
So you have the experience of really 2 almost startups. Early days of ForDirect, Shift Digital, and then I guess 3 to be exact, because now you're building Exitwise out, and now you're more on the mentoring, coaching, advisory side. What are some mistakes you see founders make as they're building their companies that could become obstacles if they would choose to sell or exit at some point?
Boy, we could probably spend 2 hours on that question. That's a great one. I speaking for personal experience, I think the shiny toy syndrome, certainly is hand in hand with the classic entrepreneur spirit, right? I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be super creative and you have to see things and opportunities where others don't. But it also means that every time you turn your head, you see another idea or concept. And I'd say, this time around, I'm very blessed that, my co-founder and I have much different personalities in that he is very creative. He sees all those opportunities and I'm a little bit more on the operational side. Right. And that marriage is nice. And I think a lot of successful businesses have found similar experiences in which you have different skill sets that you're bringing to the table and you hold each other accountable. It enables growth and success. You manage the craziness and the chaos, and you keep each other in balance. But I mean, we see it in this business. I've seen it in my previous businesses. It's managing this reality of your financial situation, and needing to make $1 of revenue today with the idea of innovation and carrying your product forward in kind of the natural place of building a business with, I've got 17 new ideas on the car ride in this morning of how we could change or modify this business. And I think that's the magic of entrepreneurship, in my opinion.
Right.
I think that's where so many of us get hung up or struggle with maybe not moving as fast as we otherwise would, because we're not building one business, we're building 7.
Right. Well, let's talk about what you're building with Exitwise. And first, I'm fascinated by the name.
I appreciate that. And I do really love the name and the brand. I would love to take credit for it. But as we've already established, I'm not the creative force in this partnership.
You're great.
Yeah, I also love the name. We get a lot of positive feedback on it. And I think for my role within the business, one of the 5 things that I do here is on the marketing side, and it makes it a lot easier to build a brand when the name resonates a little bit. It tells a little bit of the story, and part of that story is where we started, which was education. Like, how do we educate our fellow founders in a way that we wish that we would have had when we were doing it. My partner, Todd Sullivan, he has built and sold 4 businesses along the way. And, I haven't had as much of that experience as him, but we both have our stories, and we both come to this, from day one, this idea that we just want to build the content that we wish that we had access to when we were going through it the first and the second and the third and the fourth times. And that's where the whys comes from.
Right.
And kind of is the backbone of the brand that we're building.
So, and what you're doing is more than just, it's deeper in some ways in investment banking. You're helping founders find the right bankers, make sure their businesses are set up, and make sure everything is, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted in terms of you probably from a tax, a financial, documentation, legal, all of that. Correct?
Yeah. There's really, as you've already heard me say, we're kind of building, multiple businesses or business models within what we're doing. We started very transactional, and our thesis on that side of the business has not changed. It's all about industry specificity, and that there's nothing wrong with a local banker or M&A advisor. But if you get to a certain size of your business, we think in that $20 to $25 million and above enterprise value, you're better served having advisors around you that know that industry, as well, if not better. And they know the buyers, they know the multiples, they know the last 10 transactions that happened. They're better served at building out your SIM and your sales strategy for when you go to market. They're a better platform to carry success and reduce risk. And that thesis has remained. We serve many industries in that way. We have partnerships with over 100 boutique investment bankers that serve within their own industries in our ability to help transactionally founders that are going through that process. So that's one piece of the business. On the front side of that is, as you said, more of the coaching, consulting, mentorship. And what we found early on was that we're not going to catch founders 2 days before it's time to sell. And even if we did, some of them may not have businesses that are perfect or perfectly ready to sell yet.
Right.
And so we're using that same thesis, or we're applying that same thesis in a different way, which is, how do you get that same level of credibility and industry expertise earlier? And you're bringing in, any layer of expertise that is really required to take them from where they're at today until a place where they can actually go to market. And that can be technology, that can be strategy, that can be revenue generation. There's really no limitation to that. And we're doing it through, again, a very similar model to we're using with our banking network. And that is, exited founders, folks like myself that have built incredible businesses and exited. They can give a lot of guidance and feedback to their fellow founders in their same industries. And beyond giving them great vision and strategy, they can, they get a lot out of it as well, right? They get a lot of I guess, value themselves of supporting and helping their fellow founders. So that's the second piece. The third is more technology and giving kind of better valuation data for the industry. And this is kind of the idea that the first, well, it's not really the idea. It's the first question that a founder will ask us when we're on the phone. What is my business worth? And we felt like if we could build a better mousetrap to get a range and valuation sooner to these founders, that's part of the educational process that is very helpful. So they have an understanding that, hey, my buddy told me my business is worth 40. Well, it's actually only worth 20. That changes what the game plan is.
Sure. In terms of disruption, it seems like you're building something that's maybe new, not really that's been practiced in terms of M&A and the traditional bankers or what have you in the past. Would that be correct?
I appreciate you saying that, and I believe that we are cutting our own kind of place in the world.
Right.
Disruption's a big word. I think every entrepreneur wants to disrupt.
Sure.
I mean, I love that idea. I'd say we're kind of augmenting, maybe is probably
a better word. Yeah.
In year two, or augmentation. In that, I think we're just adding value to founders at a time that they need it.
Okay.
Think about any entrepreneur that's built a business. They are an expert in their business and what they've built and the market that they're serving. When it comes time to what do I do to sell this business, they likely have not done it before. And so, we feel like we're providing a really valuable service there that is an augmentation to the banker industry. There's some incredible investment bankers that we work with every day that have such deep knowledge and are way more successful than I certainly could be in selling those businesses, but they're very transactional. And that's what they're built to do, and that's what they're great at. But they're not necessarily there to answer, the emotional conversations, answer a lot of,
sure.
A lot of broad questions about, what's happening or what to expect. They're there to sell your business, and that serves a really, really important role. We just feel like we're filling an additional role that maybe has been underserved, especially in the lower middle market. For businesses in that lower tier,
right?
I don't feel like this service exists in a lot of different places.
I think you're right. And judging from 25 years of covering this part of the industry,
I appreciate that.
I mean, yeah, you see a lot of. I mean, there's so many deals that never got across the finish line for various reasons. I mean, some of that is mistakes or just ignorance of not knowing how to play the game or how to position the company correctly. Hiring the wrong banker. That's happened.
Yep,
more than once. So yeah, and in coming at it too, I think you and I've had a few conversations in the past, but you have a new look on life, on the whole professional work-life balance, and I'd love to hear your perspective on that, because I know you were pretty intense for several years. I mean, traveling, working way too many hours. I'm
Yep.
guessing. We've all been there, but you've seemed to be in a really good place professionally and personally. And how did that come about? And what's your perspective on that?
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, we've talked about this before. I think it's there's a lot of different ways to answer that question. I mean, I am very thankful for the place in life that I am today, and I guess I have to tip my cap to, part of the reason that I'm here is because, I and a lot of my partners and mentors over the years, we worked really, really hard. And so,
Yes,
it would
yes.
be hard for me to not acknowledge that a lot went into getting here. But with that said, those were long days and weeks, months and years on the road, building something incredible that I'm incredibly thankful for and proud of, with people that I am still friends with today.
Sure.
But it took a personal toll on me over a long time that, my relationships outside of the office weren't what they should have been with my family and my friends. My health wasn't as good. I wasn't eating right. I guess I had hair back then. But yeah,
I don't remember that, but
yeah, that was a long time ago. But I think, it wasn't the healthiest time of my life. And, where I'm at today, having, taking a time after my exit to take a breath and kind of reevaluate the positive things in my life and what I wanted to spend time. It's really, for me, I focus on 3 areas, and I always coach and counsel on these 3.
Okay.
One, work on things that are challenging, that are hard, and that you get a lot out of or you enjoy. And that can be rewiring your bathroom. That can be, building a new business.
Right.
Do things that are hard, because taking on things you haven't done before are really, really interesting and invigorating. Second, pour into people that you enjoy being around. And, that doesn't mean everybody tells you you're great. It means spending time with people that can challenge you and tell you that you're wrong,
Right.
without making you feel bad about yourself. Right. And holding you accountable, but, spending that time thoughtfully with the people that you want to spend time with. And if you can accomplish those 2 things and, fill the bank account with what is needed, to live the life that you want, to me, that is the place that I'm at in my life. And I really believe that I get to work on really exciting problems many of which I haven't tackled before every day. I get to do it with people that I enjoy, that challenge me. I get to spend a lot of time with my family and friends, and I'm thankful that I get to do what I want with those people. And I guess it's a bit long-winded. I'm thankful for the place in life that I am, and I feel like I'm a little bit more appreciative of this time.
That's fascinating. I mean, because you are an entrepreneur and a founder and building something new, but yet you've been able to find that lane that I think many of us, yearn for, or, attain, look to have in our own lives. You were you were on the buy side in the past. I mean, we kind of touched on it earlier, but what are some things that might keep a deal from getting across the finish line? And I'm sure there's quite a few, but what are some things that you've seen, red flags or mistakes, or as you've gone down the process of looking at a company to buy?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's nothing more heartbreaking than going through 6 months of work and having it explode towards the end. I'd say that the first and foremost is financial accuracy. You can't afford to get into the midst of diligence and have the buyer find mistakes in your modeling, in your financials, in your financial reporting. If the moment that happens is the moment that they start, triple questioning everything going forward. And it's not to say
Right.
that you can't survive those errors. Everybody makes mistakes. But it makes life very, very difficult for everyone if suddenly people are questioning every line item in a financial model. So that's number one. Make sure that your financial team is credible. They've been there before. They know what they're doing. They've quadruple checked everything, even getting external deep dives prior to entering a process, I think is really,
Sure.
really important. 2 is kind of documentation, agreements, signatures. You wouldn't believe how many businesses are quote unquote ready to go to market, and then you go into the kind of their initial data room, and half of their agreements with clients aren't signed. or there's a big percentage of line items
Wow.
in their financials that they don't have contracts in the data room, and they can't find them. We've all been there, right? I'll do it tomorrow, but it's kind of like it's studying for the final exam, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when you get, in the early days, when you get a contract signed, put it in one place. And if you keep doing that every day, you're going to get to the other side in which everything is organized. But it is shocking how many times we get into that process and can't find some of the basic agreements, employment agreements, you name it, that they just haven't been diligent over time. And that's a tough one, right? I mean, we had a deal close in December in which, there were, I guess my third point is IP and kind of getting the proper documentation around who's written code for you. But we had people, trying to track down folks in Europe that had written code for this business 7 years ago, and they hadn't signed off on kind of the appropriate document.
Sure.
And the buyer really wanted it, right? So you're trying to find a developer that you hired for one project 7 years ago, and it sounds ridiculous, but like it is kind of important. Like that piece of code, that piece of technology is important.
I will wholeheartedly, for personal experience, both that and even the whole trademark copyright. You just got to make sure those are locked down.
Totally.
Too. Yeah.
Totally. And the last one I would say is time, which probably sounds like a fluffy one, but time kills all deals, right? That's not a saying that I made up, right? It hangs out there, and it's one of those things that when you are a business owner or part of an executive team that's selling your business, you have 2 full-time jobs. Yeah, and you have to embrace the suck, because it's going to be hard. And there's no I'll get to it tomorrow. If you're in the midst of diligence,
right, it's got to be done now. Yeah,
you got to do it, or you have to have somebody on your team that is able to do it. I mean, some of the best transactions that we've been a part of, there's really double resources that have been set up prior to, and so that the CEO isn't having to do everything. Right, they've got their SWAT team that is capable of handling 80% of the requests, and they know it's their priority. But when 1 day leads to 2 days, that leads to three days, and that continues to happen, the buyer starts to lose a little bit of faith on what it is that they're buying and how organized they are. If every request takes time.
What are some hidden minefields for a buyer from the buyer perspective? Not from the seller perspective, but look, I mean, we see every once in a while you see a story about a big private equity firm buying a company and it blows up on them. And I would imagine that if you're a strategic buyer, you maybe, you might not have as much experience as a PE.
I love this question. And there's a lot that goes into it. We don't stick around in a lot of cases post-transaction, but we know what they're going into, and we certainly keep track of the founders that we've had success with. And I'd say that there's a couple different flavors of kind of the same comment, and that is, setting yourself up for success in that transition has everything to do with the expectations that were set on the way in. And it gets really, really tricky because there's so many different moving parts, right? Is the founder or the CEO going to stick around post-transaction? Depending if that's a yes or a no, it completely changes the way that this transaction should be set up. And one of the most difficult situations that we see is when the CEO wants to depart rather quickly, but they also don't want to include the broader team in the diligence process for confidentiality reasons, which are very real and reasonable.
Yes.
But they're setting themselves up for a really difficult situation post when they're trying to fight their way out within 3 months. Yet the team beneath them isn't quite there strategically. They don't necessarily know the buyers that well. They don't really understand the thesis particularly well, and it's like they're getting married the same day that they went on their first date, and it can make for a really, really difficult and challenging integration for both sides.
Sure.
And I think there's, like I said, there's a lot of different flavors of that. I think the biggest conversations that we have around this topic with our founders is trying to pick and choose the people that are involved in the transaction early, and trying to be really strategic around who's going to be here and who's not, and who's on the other side of this transaction that they need to be interacting with. Right. And how do we build those relationships and have, shared vision of what that future looks like? Not everything's going to be perfect. There's always going to be bumps in the road, but I'm a big believer in people. And if you can get people on the same page in these transactions and expectations are set directionally, I think you have a much better chance of having success. Now, there's technical integration issues that, that's a whole different question. Or visions where, the buyer just bought it for the customers and they were going to trash the technology the moment that they bought it.
Right.
There's a lot of different reasons to buy a business, but I'd say that one's the biggest and most complicated.
I've got a question. That just raised another question that I hadn't even really thought of, but there are certain PE firms or venture capital firms that if they come knocking, you as a founder probably want to run away from. I mean, we hear stories occasionally of, the differences of opinion, or everything is great at the signing dinner, the champagne's flowing, and then the next day reality sets in and you realize this isn't my company anymore. I'm not the boss.
Yep. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one because it's complicated.
Sure.
And it kind of goes back to my earlier point that it's setting expectations and having a reasonable understanding of what that future looks like. And it's one thing to do one thing during the buying process and then do something different post. Those are the ones that, if you're not honoring kind of the intent of the words on the paper, those are the ones that, we tend not to go back to.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that, trashing the entire team or the code base is necessarily the wrong answer. It's just setting that expectation, early to whatever extent that you can.
Right.
We're bigger believers in kind of the professional buyers, and professional buyers we see in both kind of camps. Some professional buyers, they're just super efficient. They're great at integration. They know what they're buying. They know why they're buying it, and they know what they're going to do with it. And they just do a great job of integrating. Right. And then there's some really good buyers that are pros at buying for other reasons and implementing their playbook to get the financial return that they want. And for me, as long as there's a general understanding of kind of what you're getting into, right? I don't know that you can be upset about that when it actually happens.
No, but I think having that understanding and knowing which conversations to have, which questions to ask is incredibly important in that process. Both from a seller and buyer, but certainly totally from a seller.
And I would say it goes along with the founder or CEO's ability to verbalize their wishes.
Right.
We've had founders that are, visibly upset, like severe depression, seeing their name come off the building. And they got well beyond the money that they wanted when they first started the process. Yeah. They do not have a financial problem.
Right.
But seeing the name come off the building is devastating. And it's almost like, I wish I could rewind the clock 12 months because I wouldn't have done this deal again. And it has nothing to do with anything other than, one thing. We had a client that was literally taking paintings off the wall after the fact. Like very strange kind of attachments. And I shouldn't even say strange because these are founders that have built things for years. But it's kind of admitting to yourself that this is my goal. Is my goal to protect my team? Is my goal to keep the name of the building? Is my goal to maximize my dollars? I think coming to terms with that allows the seller to find the right buyer. Even if, from us, the outsiders, we say like, wow, that was pretty harsh. Well, as long as it aligned with what the founding team or the CEO wanted.
Then, exactly. Right.
There's some tough ones out there for sure.
Horror stories of that. Yeah.
There's some tough ones.
So, all right. So last question here as we wrap up. Okay. Next 24 months, are we going to see any big surprises on that? Hey, let's just think automotive. Retail.
Oh boy. We could have spent the full hour just on this one.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah, I know.
I would say, I don't know that I have even the best perspective on some of those tools, being in the role that I've been in for the last 2 years, my perspective as a car shopper is that digital retailing is no farther along today than it was pre-COVID.
Of course. It's a myth.
and that is really disappointing as a shopper. That there are, we still have some of the process deficiencies and technology deficiencies that, we all, set out to fix long ago. And I think that's, the digital retailing tools that have kind of propagated over the last chunk of years, there's going to be a lot of evolution. I'm not a prophet by saying AI is going to change some of these things, but I think the integrations and the ability to kind of like consolidate data in different ways is speeding up. And I think we may crack the code, sooner than later. I'm super fascinated, and I have been, a tip of the cap to you and the Autovate conference since sitting there and listening to some of the EV related conversations. We try not to get distracted by the news and kind of all the bombastic predictions. I think just the realities of what the next 2 to 5 years have. I don't think it's what we maybe thought it was going to be in regards to EVs. I've got a hybrid. I love it. I think it's amazing. I don't know if I'm ready for a full EV, and I'm probably not alone in that. So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch over the next little bit.
Well, that's been the message at Autovate the last 2 to 3 years, is more of a tempered perspective as to where the true disruption is going to be and how long it will take. So, but I'm glad. Thank you for saying that. We try to stay away from those bombastic prognostications out there.
This is not I'm not paid to say this, and it's not the first time that you've heard this. It's the best automotive conference that I've been to personally. Just really enjoyed, and I'll be back for sure.
Fantastic, great, Brian. I really enjoyed this conversation, and
likewise,
this has been fascinating. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for everything you do. And it's great to spend time with you and continue the conversations.
Great.
Alrighty.
Experience the unique connections and opportunities Brian was just talking about at the 2024 Autovate Conference, December 4th and 5th in Scottsdale, Arizona. Register at autovate.org today.